As you've probably already heard, Akira Toriyama has tragically passed away at the age of 68. The news broke just a couple of nights ago, and it's been pretty much everywhere since then. All over YouTube, all over Twitter, you see people honoring and discussing the life and work and the brilliance and success of Akira Toriyama. There's no doubt that this news came like a shock to the heart. It really shocked the entire world. Toriyama was only 68 years old, which relatively isn't that old, and it felt like he still had a lot to give. So today, everybody's already been saying and discussing what Toriyama's meant to them, and today I wanted to do something a little different. I just wanted to discuss the profound impact that Akira Toriyama and his works like Dragon Ball have impacted the world and the legacy he leaves behind. Obviously, Toriyama and his works have met so many people. YouTube and Twitter have been flooded with people talking about how Dragon Ball has influenced their life and inspired them to do what they do. And Akira Toriyama is no doubt one of, if not the most influential mangaka of all time, maybe. Dragon Ball inspired so many things that we have today, and I just wanted to break down and go through some of what he's leaving behind and how he impacted the world. First of all, Toriyama's success goes beyond just Dragon Ball. He was an extremely talented manga before he even, started creating Son Goku with inspiration from Journey to the West and Sun Wukong. Years before Dragon Ball even began, Toriyama had already become a great and successful manga artist. Dragon Ball began in 1984, the manga, and the anime began in 1986. But even in the likes of 1980, February 4th, 1980, Dr. Slump premiered, and Dr. Slump already had an anime adaptation starting on 1981 that ran to 1986. That means by the time Dragon Ball had even begun, Toriyama had already had a highly successful manga in the form of Dr. Slump that had already been running on animated television for 3 years. And as soon as it ended, Dragon Ball began to be adapted. And Dr. Slump was wildly successful, and very rarely do you see somebody with that successful of a work be able to follow it up with something even greater, much less the most popular and impactful manga and anime of all time. Dragon Ball was incredibly influential worldwide. And many of the manga, especially shonen that we have today, was heavily influenced by Dragon Ball and Toriyama. If you've ever watched One Piece or Naruto and kept up with Masashi Kishimoto, the creator of Naruto, and Eiichiro Oda, the creator of, you know that they took lots of inspiration from Toriyama, and Dragon Ball heavily influenced both of those series. And One Piece and Naruto, along with Dragon Ball, are arguably all three top 5 of the biggest manga of all time. And without Dragon Ball, Naruto and One Piece may not be around, because Oda and Kishimoto are both on record talking about and discussing how they grew up reading Dragon Ball and watching Dragon Ball on a weekly basis, and how Toriyama was like a mentor to them and like an inspiration to them to also become mangaka, to show that it was possible to have a successful career and tell amazing stories through that medium. And Dragon Ball has inspired so many other forms of media. You see Dragon Ball references all the time. Like, you're looking at Marvel movies these days and seeing them talking about Kamehameha and just the profound impact that Dragon Ball has to this day and how it's shaped so many series that we've come to know. To think that without Dragon Ball, we may not have the likes of One Piece and Naruto and even more modern, newer series like Demon Slayer or Jujutsu Kaisen, which also probably take some inspiration from Dragon Ball, because Toriyama and Dragon Ball are like the grandfather of shonen. It really paved the way for all of the series we have today. Eiichiro Oda and Kishimoto both released statements on Toriyama's passing and like how devastated they were by it. You can read their quotes, the entire quote, which I won't read the entire quote to you about how it affected them. Oda talks about how much being called a friend by Toriyama meant to him, because Toriyama was like a mentor to him. And Oda even talks about how Toriyama made manga and anime cool, because many years ago it was not mainstream. Anime was not a mainstream thing like it is today, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when the likes of Oda and Kishimoto were growing up in Japan reading Dragon Ball. It wasn't like what it is today, where everybody watches and talks about anime. And Dragon Ball really helped pave the way to make anime mainstream like it is. And there's just so much you could go into about that. But he even just hear how they could make manga go global, and how Oda even viewed Toriyama like a hero, paving the way for future people to come and future stories to be told, which is really true. And Kishimoto talks about how he first grew up with Dr. Slump when it was first being serialized in his younger days. and how after Dr. Slump concluded, Dragon Ball began, and he began following it. And how when Dragon Ball ended, how much it felt like a loss to him. And how Dragon Ball inspired him to create a great work, Naruto, which has also been a cultural phenomenon, highly influential and inspirational to so many people as well. Like, Toriyama and Dragon Ball inspired this creation, and I think, like, just for Toriyama his work to inspire so many other big series in addition to his own, with that kind of ripple effect, just shows the legacy and impact he has left on the world. Like, based on this quote, like, he saw Toriyama as the god of manga, like the guy who led the way and revolutionized it. And if you read the full quote, like, it's a really tear-jerking quote. Like, Takeshimoto just goes into depth about just how sad Toriyama's death has left him, because, like, he was like a role model to him and a friend. Like, even Oda discussed, like I mentioned earlier, how overjoyed they were to be called a friend by Toriyama, and, like, it's like a dream come true, because when they were kids, they were reading his manga, being inspired by his manga, and, like, meeting their heroes when they got older to also be successful just like him. That's an amazing thing. And I do encourage you to read the full quotes and the full statements they made, as it really just gives you a lot of insight into the impact Dragon Ball made on them and their lives and their work. In addition to Dragon Ball, I also love One Piece and Naruto. I love all three series. I think all three are fantastic. There are 3 of the top 10 best-selling manga of all time for a reason. And according to this list, Dragon Ball is the 5th best-selling manga of all time, which is just incredible. Of course, One Piece is the top-selling manga of all time. But Dragon Ball's mainstream success, and, like, it was highly influential and successful as a manga, when it became animated is when it truly took root worldwide. Some people not realize that Dragon Ball, the manga, ended in 1996. And while it was already huge in Japan, it didn't become a worldwide phenomenon until several years later. And I think it's very rare you see a series that ran for the better part of over a decade, because Dragon Ball ran from 1984 to 1996, the manga. And for it to become, like, such a phenomenon after it had ended, like years after it had ended, it's just a testament to how great it was. Because I would say its main explosion came when it started getting dubbed and broadcast to other parts of the world, which is natural because dubbing anime and airing them in other parts of the world wasn't a common thing back then. Dragon Ball's explosion of popularity in the English-speaking world began, like, a lot with Ocean Studios and Peter Kalamis and Ian James Corlett and Brian Drummond and Ocean Studios dubbing Dragon Ball. And then it started airing on Toonami, and so many people got hooked on the series through Toonami in the early 2000s, and it was just like 4 or 5 years after the series had concluded in Japan, the anime as well. You might often hear about how after Ocean Studios dubbed Dragon Ball Z, how Toonami would just air it from the Saiyan Saga until the fight with the Ginyu Force, and he would start over again because there was no more episodes. But then it really exploded when Funimation got hold of it, and they started dubbing it. Because when Funimation finally continued where Ocean Studios left off, people could finally see the episodes they hadn't seen yet, and that's what led to Super Saiyan. And many older fans in their 20s and 30s have, like, very impactful memories of seeing Goku go into Super Saiyan for the first time. That Super Saiyan transformation is perhaps the most iconic it probably is the most iconic transformation and moment in, like, manga and anime history. And that's just the English-speaking world. Dragon Ball is massive, and especially in, like, Latin America and Mexico and even, like, Spanish-speaking countries. Worldwide, it's massive. Goku vs. Jiren was happening. They were having worldwide watch parties in, like, Latin America like this, and it's just insane that it had such a cultural significant impact that it would just bring people together in events like this. Like, this is an anime, and, like, very few anime have this sort of impact that people will come together and do things like this. And I think that's awesome. Like, people were, like, just cheering for Goku to defeat Jiren, and, like, this is episode 131 right here, the last episode of Super, and it's just a worldwide phenomenon, it really is. And this is the work he left behind. This is the impact his work had on the world. Like, Dragon Ball's longevity is also incredible, because Dragon Ball is 40 years old, and it's still, like, becoming more and more popular and obtaining new fans, and still leaving its impact in new, incredible ways through transformations like Ultra Instinct and Beast Gohan and Ultra Ego, and still, like, trending worldwide for different reasons with Dragon Ball Super. 40 years after it initially began, Dragon Ball is still bringing in new fans in so many different ways. Like, in the original manga brought in fans in Japan, and then the English dub and the dubs going worldwide brought in a new wave of fans for Dragon Ball Z in the early 2000s. That wasn't the end of it, because Dragon Ball would continue with like the likes of Dragon Ball Z Kai, and many people got into the series through Kai, which redubbed the series and recut it to be more similar to the manga. And that aired around 2009, 2010. I remember watching Kai, even though I'd already seen some of Dragon Ball Z by then. That re-engaged me with the series even more, seeing that, and that gave people a new chance to get into the series. And then years later, with the arrival of Dragon Ball Super becoming so popular, when people got into Dragon Ball Super, they would naturally want to go back and read the original manga and watch Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z to see where it all began. And very rarely do you see series like this still to pull in new fans in so many different ways over so many different decades. And some people even got into the series through the video games and the movies. The Dragon Ball's longevity is incredible because Dragon Ball ended 18 years ago, and rarely do you see a series get new content over 20 years after it originally ended. Because here we are in 2024 getting new content 28 years after Toriyama initially ended the manga. And we're still here, getting a new anime this year in Dragon Ball Daima, which will be Toriyama's potentially last work that he had a lot of influence on. Of course, we don't have a lot of details about other projects he might have been working on, but like Dragon Ball Daima, he apparently had a lot of involvement with that, and seeing that air is going to be very different. But Toriyama was also, while accessible beyond just Dragon Ball and Dr. Slump, he also had lots of involvement in video games like Dragon Quest and Chrono Trigger. He was just successful in so many areas, and it just shows how talented of an individual he was, beyond just Dragon Ball. And when his death was announced, like the whole world began to mourn his passing. And it just seeing that just shows the impact he had. He was trending worldwide over on Twitter all day, and still is. Lots of people saying, "Rip Akira Toriyama, rest in power, thank you Toriyama." Just millions and millions of tweets worldwide about Dragon Ball, people discussing how much Toriyama and Dragon Ball meant to them and the impact it had on their lives. And people were just celebrating his and the work and the man he was in his life and the work he's left behind for us to continue to enjoy. Like, Dragon Ball will always be something we can always continue to enjoy, even though he's not here anymore. Like, Dragon Ball will continue to be beloved by many. And it might even have a future with the likes of Tori Taro. And the future is very murky for Dragon Ball right now. We don't know what's going to happen. But like, even the past decade, Dragon Ball Super has been a lot of Tori Taro, and Toriyama's had limited involvement. Meaning, like, Toriyama was setting up Tori Taro to be the successor of the series. And if Dragon Ball does continue for years to come, I'm excited to see where it goes. I've seen people questioning and concerned about where it might go without Toriyama there to be involved in it. But like right now, I think people are just focused on mainly celebrating the work he left behind and what he has accomplished in his lifetime. Because in addition to just fans, many celebrities and different people worldwide from different countries were posting about Toriyama's loss. Tori Taro even tweeted out about it, where he just wanted to be praised by Toriyama, and Tori Taro began as an artist drawing Dragon Ball fan manga, and eventually became the man drawing Dragon Ball Super, an official work himself, and that just shows how like much of an impact Toriyama's loss may be impacting Tori Taro going forward. Even the president of France tweeted about this. The likes of Takao Toyama reveals that Toriyama had been ill since last year. Like, lots of people are tweeting, giving us new information about this. Also, the Japanese voice of Goku since 1986 even tweeted about this. And for those who didn't know, Toriyama handpicked Masako Nozawa to be the voice of Goku. And her discussing it and what Goku and Toriyama meant to her is extremely sad. She says right here that Toriyama said to her, "Take care of Goku for me, please." Like, he entrusted her to embody the spirit of Goku. When Toriyama would be drawing Goku for the manga, he would be hearing Nozawa's voice. Even China is mourning the loss of Toriyama, with the Ministry of Affairs also posting a video about that, which I also encourage you to go take a look at. Jackie Chan has posted about Toriyama and is mourning his loss. And I was curious how people like got into Dragon Ball. I even made a post on my YouTube community tab about it. And people here are talking about how they got into it through the video games and how they got into it through Dragon Ball Super and Dragon Ball Z. Some people are new fans that didn't get into the series until by the time Dragon Ball Super started. Me, myself, I've been a fan of Dragon Ball since I was probably like 8 years old in the mid-2000s. Dragon Ball brought people together in so many ways. It influenced so many incredible works. And right now, people are definitely concerned about the series and worried that Toriyama didn't get to complete what he was working on. But I think we have to look at it like this. Dragon Ball it was completed. Toriyama didn't pass before he completed Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball ended in 1996. The original 500 plus chapters of the original manga are available, and they concluded 28 years ago. Toriyama wrote the story he wanted to tell from start to finish, and completed it with a proper ending, with Goku flying off with Oop. And everything we've gotten in the past decade, since 2013, with Battle of Gods, Resurrection F, Dragon Ball Super, Dragon Ball Daima coming up, Dragon Ball Super Broly, Dragon Ball Super Superhero, Dragon Ball Super Manga, that's all bonus content, all extra stuff Toriyama never originally intended to create. All that content, we could be lucky that we're even getting that, because really, do you see a series as long as Dragon Ball that was told start to finish, with the creator telling the story he wants to tell, creating another decade's worth of content, starting 2 decades later? Because 2013 when Gods aired was 17 years after the original manga ended, and it spawned a decade's worth of new content in movies, anime, and manga. Some manga have passed without completing their stories, like the creator of Berserk. People have picked up the mantle to finish the story for them with their many notes left behind, but Toriyama told the story he wanted to tell. He's been grooming and working side by side with Toriyama for the past decade, and there's any stories left to be told. Toyotaro probably knows where the direction Toriyama wanted to take the series, how he possibly even wanted to conclude it. But we shouldn't be concerned about the future of Dragon Ball. We should be thankful that the story was completed with the story Toriyama himself did want to tell. And that's the original manga. It ran for 12 incredible long years and inspired incredibly long anime, Dragon Ball Z Kai, and so much more. And when we're watching Dragon Ball Daima and Dragon Ball Super in the movies and reading Dragon Ball Super manga, we should be thankful that we're even getting this extra bonus content to begin with. Because when I was a kid playing the games and watching the movies and watching Dragon Ball Z, I was never expecting us to get new content. When Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods came and Resurrection F came, I was beyond excited because that was new Dragon Ball content and I was there to see it in person. I wasn't there to witness and read Dragon Ball Weekly while it was originally airing because I hadn't been born yet. And getting to experience this stuff as it came out on a weekly basis was something I never thought possible, because Dragon Ball was my favorite before Super even came. And you know what, Dragon Ball Super Weekly with everybody and talking about theories and seeing Ultra Instinct break websites like Crunchyroll, and Goku vs. Jiren episode 130 doing the same thing and being celebrated worldwide in places like Latin America, and being involved in that weekly was such a great experience that I'm thankful I was there for. And I think we're very lucky to have experienced that, because that was all bonus content beyond the original Dragon Ball story. Stuff we were never originally intended to get because we already had so much content to begin with. Because 500 plus chapters of a manga, that's a lot of content, and many mangas and series don't reach nothing near that long. Dragon Ball and Toriyama have no doubt left a profound and lasting impact on the world that will be felt for many years to come. And whatever future content we get with Dragon Ball, I'll be thankful we're getting it at all, and thankful for what we've gotten, and we'll look back at what we've already received from Toriyama himself fondly to begin with. There's no doubt without Toriyama's impact in his works and Dragon Ball, we wouldn't have many of the things that we love today, like One Piece and Naruto. And I think as fans, we should continue to mourn his loss, but also celebrate the amazing impact and works he left behind. And there's so much more left to say, but I've already been talking for a while, so I think I'm going to wrap it up here. If you've made it to the end of the video, thank you for watching. And let me know what you think. What does Dragon Ball mean to you? How does Dragon Ball impact your life? How did you get into Dragon Ball? I want to hear about it if you get this far in the video. Just let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.